Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of this committee. Thank you for having me here today. My name is David Dunmoyer with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I really want to commend you all for having this discussion during the interim. I think we were chatting beforehand. It tends to be business and commerce committees or things that are managing technology issues, but this is squarely a mental health crisis that we're talking about here today. So just want to thank you for affording us the time to have this critically important discussion. My colleagues here, Dr. Flint, Maureen, did an incredible job laying out the statistics and how each of those statistics correlates to an actual human life. I want to focus more on why this is not a bug in social media. This is quite literally an animating feature that drives these social media companies to not just put profit over the health of children, but really find ways to double down on these harms that we're talking about here today. So the way at TPPF we talk about this is a choice architecture designed by social media companies. And I want to say the bottom line up front, there are certainly folks in this space. We spend a lot of time disagreeing, let's say, with folks on the technology side of the aisle that say parents need to parent better, or hey, we're doing everything we can in our power to implement these tools. And part of what it'll end with is we now have demonstrable proof that that is not the case. When Texas passes laws, these companies can comply with them. But further, we need not look further than the internal files and documents of many of these major social media companies to understand that this is a design choice. And if there's one leave behind, if you all want to read some materials that really underscore this, the Wall Street Journal a few years ago did this incredible reporting called the Facebook Files. What the Facebook Files did is they culled all the internal emails about algorithmic design choices that were made to maximize profit at the expense of children. And so what they showed, their own researchers at Facebook repeatedly found Instagram harmful to a significant share of its users, and in particular, as Dr. Flint highlighted, for young teen girls. We're seeing eating disorders increase, 188% increase in ER visits from 2010 to 2020. Facebook wasn't just aware, this was presented directly to Mark Zuckerberg. And ultimately, what do they do with this information? They withheld it. Congress asked for it, academics asked for it, and they ended up pressing ahead with Instagram Kids, which, as the Facebook Files documents, was a part of their mantra to have a younger audience addicted to this product at an earlier age, so they had more data and more hours spent on a daily basis such that they would continue to fine-tune their algorithm to make the harms even more harmful. TikTok, same story, it's just better engineering. They have the most potent algorithm on planet Earth. Another Wall Street Journal investigation found the For You algorithm, which is where the kids doom scroll. It opens, so you create an account, and it opens with variety. They don't know what your interests are. Maybe you like cats, maybe you like fitness videos, maybe you like politics. And I'm thinking back to a hearing we had last session where there was a social media bill up, and there were kids talking about, oh, I found a way to outsmart the algorithm. That's something TikTok has engineered covertly to make it seem like you can outwit it. Well, I'm not going to linger as much, or I didn't press pause. They can quite literally tell by pupil dilation how you're engaging with the content, whether it gets your heart rate activated, if this is material that is going to resonate with you. So it opens with variety, measures what you linger on using all those invasive tactics, identifies your specific vulnerability, and that specific language they use, your vulnerability, and takes you down that rabbit hole. And that sets off the whole process where you're served pro-anorexia content, pro-self-harm content, and that's when, again, back to Maureen's points, the students or these children that you hear these tragic stories about, these are straight A, normal, all-star athlete students who get sucked into this vortex, and it sometimes is too far gone before parents can bring them back to the light. Recently, Attorney General Paxson sued Snapchat for allegedly misleading parents about the app's safety while exposing children to sexual material, drug promotion, and addictive design. Attorney General Paxson also recently filed suit against Roblox. I know that's something that's being talked a lot more about this interim for very similar reasons, including turning a blind eye to cultivating a, quote, digital playground for predators. And the key to this all is each of these companies advertise and do PR fluff to say we are safe for children. It's not just we're working on it, we acknowledge some of the harms, it's we are, quote, safe. So whether Meta, Snap, ByteDance, it's the same playbook. There's really 4 steps that kind of animates this whole process. And the first is to make it as easy as possible for a child to open an account. And with this process, they can make it such that they never really know, or they claim they never know, how old the child actually is. Now, how they can know your specific likes better than your spouse and know more about you than yourself, but they can't identify your age, I think that's the mystery of the century. But point two is they'll tell parents that they're safe. And they'll build oversight tools, and they'll put out press releases and statements saying we have these new tools for parents to have oversight over their child's account. And so they'll provide that false safety blanket. The third is they will harvest every morsel of data that child generates and make the product as compulsive as engineering allows. And then finally, what we're seeing is a child will get harmed, they'll deny responsibility, and they'll hide behind the veneer of the First Amendment or Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act. Or they'll say that we want reforms, but they're technically impossible to implement. They're not impossible, they're unprofitable, and that's the major difference here. Now, getting to the compliance component of this, I want to quickly recount a recent court case that happened in New Mexico. There's been kind of a sea change in litigation brought against social media companies where now courts are finding direct, demonstrable, and intentional harm befalling children. And there's a requirement under federal law through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And it routes tips for child sex abuse material to what's called ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And this is a requirement in all 50 states. Meta is by far the largest reporter in terms of signaling, hey, here is potentially child sex abuse material content. About 13.8 million of the 20.5 million cyber tip line reports filed in 2024 were filed by Meta. So on paper, due diligence, and they'll put out press releases and statements saying, hey, look, we're working on this. But this February, ICAC investigators testified at this trial in New Mexico under oath, and a special agent told the court that many of the tips his task force gets from Meta are, in his words, quote, junk. They're the bare minimum that social media companies are required to report is something like 2 data points. What is the content and when did it happen? Now, there's an opportunity for them to proactively give law enforcement the tools to say, hey, let's find this perpetrator. And what this ICAC gentleman is suggesting is that they are intentionally denying any proactive responsibility to eliminate this child sex abuse material. And it's not just for Meta. Recently, Senator Grassley opened up an investigation into XAI, Amazon, and 4 other firms, all alleging this same complaint. So I'll end with kind of the federal landscape, and then I'm happy to answer any questions about policy recommendations. I'm sure we can have a discussion about what Texas can do. But there's really 2 major federal laws that I want to highlight to better understand why it can be so hard to advance comprehensive kid safety laws. And the first is Section 230, which I imagine you've heard it before, but just a brief reminder, this stemmed from the 1996 Communication Decency Act. And this was a law that was actually passed that had a purpose of keeping indecency away from minors. That was the sole, the animating intent behind it. Now, the court struck it down within a year of it going into effect. And what survived is Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act, which grants these platforms, social media companies, a sword and a shield. A sword to censor, strike down any content that they don't want on their website, which is their prerogative under Section 230, but also a shield to shield them from any liability. And so in these cases of child sex abuse material or sex and human trafficking, you'll quite literally see statements from social media companies saying, we have Section 230, so we are not responsible. So this is where intent of law and impact have clearly not fully aligned over the course of the last 3 decades. And then finally, COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This was passed in 1998, and this was intended to be the privacy law protecting children's sensitive information. And what it says is that if there is a digital service provider that collects the information of its users, if you are under the age of 13, it triggers affirmative parental consent to use that website. Now, if you have kids or you have nieces and nephews or cousins that are using social media and they're under 13, well, how is this happening? Again, back to my point of when they set the terms of service to, if you click accept, you are admitting you're 13 plus, social media companies say, great, we don't have the actual knowledge of the age of the child. They have consented that they're over 13, so we are not going to require affirmative parental consent. So since Maureen hit on the Texas landscape, I'll stop there and again just say thank you for having this discussion and happy to talk about any policy or any questions you all may have. Thank you.